I met someone I consider to be my closest friend online. In spite of that, I don't like to refer to our connection as an online friendship because that suggests it exists only online. Yet, even if online is still the space where we share our exchanges, I believe it transcends that. That although the content, the words, the messages are confined to that virtual space, the actual link between us is outside of that. And it's certainly at a distance since we live on two opposite sides of the world. Friendship is a huge topic. But what about an appreciation of distance friendship? This is not to say distance friendships are better than any others, but I'd like to consider them as valuable in their own right, and not as an addition or a stand-in to something else. Before I focus on distance friendship, I like to, as always, inspect the word, in this case, friendship, specifically the ship in it. I was wondering, do we consider the ship to be a vessel where our friendships, our interactions, our connections go, where they live? Or do we consider friendship itself to be a ship? The former suggests that me and the other person do need a shared space to interact in, but the latter makes it more metaphorical. It says that the space of the ship is created by the connection between two people. Connection comes first and space later. It's like a ship only they can see, and it lives in the abstract. It not only transcends space, but it creates its own space. It can be symbolic too. I actually wrote a piece once, a written piece that concerned our friendship, and I used a symbol of a certain place, though I won't disclose which one, that binds us. The space I wrote about is a real place that exists in the world. But in our case, it serves as a symbol because obviously we don't have a real material place. In that case, our friend ship can also be a friend kitchen or friend dance floor or friend bathroom. And I won't tell you which one of those three I used in my piece. But to go back to distance friendships specifically, I think the fact they transcend circumstances is one of the main arguments to use in favor of them. They can transcend physical distance. When we're kids, we create bonds based on the classroom, and then university, then possibly work. Our friendships are often linked to our environment. At some point, even if you and the other person drift apart, sometimes the lack of distance between you still keeps you afloat. And, well, it's obviously not an option when you're at an actual distance. That distance is a void that staring at you and asking you, is this relationship important to you? You can't not see it. It's easy to pretend you don't see it if you can fill it up with circumstance, with history, with, well, closed space. But it's harder when you're actually separated. Also, sometimes you think you need someone more than you actually do, in terms of quantity. That may apply to introverts who need more of their own time and space. And it doesn't mean they don't care about their friend, but sometimes they spend more time with them that they want or need because of guilt. And the distance creates an opportunity for more spaciousness, which in turn can create more depth of connection, a focus on quality instead of quantity. I recently read an excerpt from a book called Big Friendship by Amina Trousseau and Anne Friedman, which made some interesting points on friendship, and I'd like to apply them specifically in the context of distance friendships. They talk about three important components of a successful, close friendship. Those three components are ritual, assurance, and openness. First of all, ritual, doing something at a regular time, an activity, a form in which you communicate, something that can make the connection as free-flowing and constant as that cup of coffee you drink every morning. Sometimes setting up a plan to talk monthly or weekly or daily gives it a sense of realness. Some would consider it a task, a thing to be crossed off your list, but I don't agree. I think adding this ritualistic component to the rest of your life schedule can give it a sense of importance, something that binds your relationship to that person to the rest of your routine and makes it an invaluable part of it. Sometimes rituals grow out naturally. Me and said person text each other every day. We send those long, multiple paragraph long messages. And I actually happen to sit at my desk and type in a message at the same time every day. It's actually very soothing to know that every single day I have a bit of time to read their message, take it in, and reply. Through this, it, on the one hand, has its own special space separated from the rest of my day and the world. But on the other hand, it's weaved into the rest of my day, connected to it. The second thing is assurance, and I think that in distance friendship this can be particularly strong. by maintaining a strong bond and by sustaining this space we have, but still considering the future promise of meeting, especially if you've never met before in real life, kind of makes it stronger too. You always have that assurance in the back of your mind that although it feels great to connect with them, there's still something bigger that awaits you. Every once in a while we engage in those contemplations on what would happen if we met and when it will happen. It gives it a sense of almost mystery, discovery, another layer to be unraveled. The third component is openness. I think that sometimes when enough distance is involved, it gives you a higher chance of vulnerability to come out more easily. There is none of that stifling closeness, and it can feel more liberating to open up. There is no immediate eye contact, no misunderstandings, or at least a lower chance of misunderstandings, and more flexibility of expression. As someone who hates immediacy and being put on the spot, that can be really helpful. And the best thing is that that other person understands that perfectly. It might seem a bit artificial sometimes because I know communication is also about interruption, about fighting for precedence, about some amount of conflict. But sometimes you do need that space to have the option to be vulnerable. And that vulnerability connects to the other point of distance friendship being more out of choice more frequently. If you have a friendship that's sustained without any external factors or circumstances, usually automatically means it's important enough to you. And if it is, it might be easier for you to be open. Sure, it's not always ideal. Sometimes it's more difficult to help the other person when you're at a distance. If they have a crisis and I think I know and understand it, and yet I can't help them, I feel useless. Then also sometimes I have a crisis, and then I worry I might become too self-centered in my messages, focusing less on them and just moaning about myself all the time. But those imbalances have to happen too, because it's impossible to maintain that friendship without adding some of your own relationship to yourself. The thing about distance friendships is that whether you want it or not, your interiority is more exposed because of its more thoughtful and slower nature. So yeah, sometimes I'll spend 90% of my message moaning about myself because I need it, because I trust them to understand that I need it, because I trust them not to judge me, because I trust them to be able and willing to carry a bit of that burden with me. And I genuinely hope it goes both ways. That's the thing about vulnerability, openness. It's unpredictable. But the structure of distance friendships can sometimes contain this unpredictability, make it more comprehensible, tangible. It allows for the chaos and contradiction to shine through because of its own limited space. Another interesting thing to point out is Aristotle's categorization of friendship. I won't get into the minutiae of it here, but in its most basic terms, there are 3 kinds of friendship, based on utility, pleasure, and virtue. And the thing is, I think distance friendships are very rarely created and maintained out of utility and pleasure. I know there are exceptions to everything, but you don't usually form an online friendship or you don't maintain a distance friendship out of utility because you have no point of reference with the other person, no real life circumstance. When it comes to pleasure, well, the other person becomes mostly a part of an experience that is tailored to you anyway. What I mean is, you are set on experiencing pleasure and the other person amplifies that. Say you want to go to a party and you take the other person with you because you don't want to be alone. This is a very simplistic example, but the point is your goal is to have fun, to gain pleasure from it. The main goal is not connection, but pleasure. And of course, I know many genuine friendships may originate out of pleasure, but you rarely create or maintain a distance friendship for your own pleasure. At least it's not the main purpose of it. Then there's a third type, virtue. That is the foundation of something more lasting, deeper. And of course, there are real-life friendships based on virtue, but in this video we're focusing specifically on distance friendships and their value as they are, not just something you endure while you wait for a real friendship. So in virtue friendships, Aristotle claims they take time and involve mutual growth. And if you commit to sustaining a close friendship at a distance, one with enough rituals, assurances, and openness, you'll automatically be there for each other while you grow, and it can be really valuable. I'm not trying to say that one type of friendship is better, higher than the other. I don't even want to separate those two, put them into types. Of course, you can have a real-life friend you get separated from, or someone you meet online but you later meet in real life. But I don't think a distanced friendship is nothing but an in-between. It can have value, in itself, too. Sometimes separation can be beneficial to discover how your friendship with someone works. I will admit there are certainly disadvantages to distance, that goes without saying. And I'm not telling you this is the only type of friendship you should have. The only thing I'm trying to do is to encourage you to maybe see the substance of those friendships, no matter if they started out as distanced or they got separated recently. From my own experience, a particular distance friendship of mine is really helpful. I'm not sure where I would be right now if I didn't commit to it. I don't think there is any less substance to the connection just because it is at a distance. I appreciate it just as much. And I think the distance amplifies the fact that we care about each other because we have to show up without any other purpose than to just be there for each other. And that should not be undervalued. So if you're new here and you're enjoying my videos, then I would love to have you here as a part of my slowly but surely growing community and to hear your thoughts on the topics I discuss. So feel free to subscribe if you want to form a connection at a distance.